This is an interview that we just had with Kevin Rector. This is the full interview talking about some of the things that we've done to improve policing in Baltimore. As you well know, adding computers to our police cars, which was something that didn't happen until we became mayor, and trying to fix the 545 positions that were vacant before I got here as mayor, but at the same time trying to reduce the number of police officers that were leaving the police department while improving policing in the city. But we had a spike in violence last year, and so we thought it was important to get everybody on the streets, which we did. But we also fixed our police shift, and I'm thankful to our new FOP president, Mancuso, who worked with us to get us to the 5 and 2 police shift, which would add additional police officers to our streets, which will improve policing in Baltimore. We're under consent decree. I'm excited about the work that our new commissioner will bring to the table, but at the same time, it's how we all work together. And so again, thank you to the police department for the collaboration and our city agencies that are working with us through the Violence Reduction Initiative. But improving our intake process and getting those applications processed is really important. We've got more applications than ever, but at the same time, I had to put all of those officers on the streets to reduce violence. So again, we're working to improve that process, and I know with the new commissioner coming in that we're only going to get better. I hope you enjoy the interview and you learn more about what we're doing around Baltimore City policing.
Very good. Thank you. Are you good? Okay. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today.
Absolutely.
Now, I understand that you had some thoughts as to what you wanted to convey to me as it pertains to police recruitment. So, as I think Mr. Tucker conveyed to you, I do have some questions for you, but I wanted to just sort of turn this over to you for starters and let me know what.
I think one of the things you said was that we didn't fill the 500 positions, but I don't know whether you know that you had 545 positions that were lost prior to me becoming mayor, which is why we focused on what we needed to do to fix that. In 2018, we put the application online because it hadn't been online before, where we were averaging something like I think it was 19 applications per week, where we're getting now 81 applications a month. I think you were also aware of the fact that even if you look at those numbers, there's still the hiring in 2017 and 18 combined was more than since 2013. I think at least 2013, where you had years in the police department where your attrition rate was as high as 338. It was 220 last year, 204 the previous year, 225 in 16, 243 in 15, 225 in 14, and 265 in 13, and 243 in 2012. And your hiring in 2018 was 184, where your attrition rate was 220, which meant that you lost 36. In comparison to 2016, where you lost, netted a loss of 103, and in 2015, where you netted a loss of 152, and in 2014, where you netted a loss of 60, and in 2013, where you netted a loss of 114. So you plus 3 in 2017, and then you minus 36 in 2018. Mm-hmm. And so what is the reason? I thought you might want to write those numbers down too.
I did, and I had a chart.
Okay, so as you could see, if you looked at those numbers, and then you froze hiring in this police department for almost a 5 to 7 year period. And whenever you freeze hiring, you know what ultimately happens? You create a top-heavy organization because you're not letting your patrol people be hired. And so that's among our emphasis is getting more people on patrol. And so if you look around the national average of what patrol should be to a police department, it's anywhere from 45 to 60%, and we're well below that. I think we've shared those numbers with you all previously. And so we're focused on that. You'll see a marketing campaign that will take place sometime in between April and May, based on the work that Dan has been able to do working with the police department We've changed the testing as it relates to our police department. We now add civilians in the questioning. We even tested whether or not we have police officers who also participate. We noted when we first did that with the police officers in their uniforms and the civilians in clothing that people would focus their attention on the police officers. So now everybody is in street clothing so that everybody gets the same amount of attention. We think that having civilians involved in this process is important. We also did one other thing. We went to the state and asked for the certification of our cadet program because we realize that we're not hiring enough people from the city. So we want to start creating that pipeline early. So now our cadet program is a certified program, which means that you can come out of high school making close to $35,000 a year and spend your 2 and some years in the cadet program preparing yourself for the academy. The other issue for the city is its capacity to train officers. Our capacity to train currently where we are is about 4 classes a year. And if you've been over in that building lately with the lack of air conditioning and so forth, we deemed it unfit really for the kind of training and constitutional training and the focus that we need to have on the consent decree training. And so we've been in conversations with both Coppin State University and the University of Baltimore. In fact, yesterday, a team of folks spent time over at the University of Baltimore looking at the facility that they want to help provide for us so that we can have a space and a place that we can adequately train our officers. We also, and I think you'll hear this from the commissioner when he comes on board, looking at what does training, who should be training? Should we have professors training? And in some cases, in some jurisdictions, that's what they're using. And so we believe that ought to be integrated into our police training, having faculty folks help train our police department, especially on constitutional policing and all the laws and so forth that they have to follow. So those are some of the things that we're doing. And you should know that as crime began to spike last year, one of the things I asked the commissioner to look at was every single person who was inside of the department that was doing administrative duties. We needed to get people out on the street because we needed to stem the tide of violence. And so there were people who were in recruitment, who were responsible for onboarding, which is where our biggest problem are. We have almost doubled applications. We can't get through them fast enough. We ascertained about 3,000 applications last year. Certainly all of those applications are not qualified individuals because we've got to go through the process, but it also requires us to put together a team of folks who understand what that processing looks like. So we have asked our Department of Human Resources to intervene as well, to become partners, because it has been strictly done by the police department. We have human resource professionals under our Human Resources Department who will now be engaged in assisting us as we onboard. You also know that 3 or 4 years this police department has not had a contract, and so as a result they were operating under a 4-3 plan. And as you well know, that was very difficult in terms of putting police officers on the streets. As of this past Sunday, the new schedule went into effect. 5-2, 5-3, which puts 25% more police officers on the streets of the city at the same time. So I think we're headed in the right direction. I think there's a lot of work certainly that has to be done. I think that when Mr. Harrison comes in here, who has spent 27 years in policing, certainly understands personnel, certainly understands operations, that there'll be changes that will be made, and we would expect to give him the latitude to do that. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited about, we've put in the state budget additional dollars for training and for civilization of our police department. I think we got something like 100 positions there, as well as money for the new location for training our police officers. So again, I just want to make sure you have the information that we are looking at and the things that we're doing and the things that we've done over the years to make sure, over the last 2 years, 2 months, to make sure that we get to where we need to go. The one thing that I focused on, as you should know, for the first 60 days was getting the consent decree done, because the consent decree was not done. I remember coming in and 2 weeks in office and someone standing behind me telling me that we needed to sign a consent decree, and I had to remind them that there wasn't a document to be signed. I spent 15, 16-hour days working with our law department to get that consent decree crafted. And people said to me around the country, don't worry about it, you've got to do administration, it won't even get signed. As you well know, it's been signed, it is in place, and it requires us to do constitutional policing and training of our police officers, which is why, and community engagement, which is why I thought it was important to concentrate on that effort.
Yep, you're right. We are familiar with much of this. We've reported much of this, but I do appreciate the concise rundown and some of the newer initiatives. A couple questions related to what you've said. You did mention that there were 3,000 applications last year. I know that in mid-2018 there was a change in how you accepted applications. It went online.
Yes.
I understand that prior to that, the number of applicants was determined at the point at which individuals came through the door to take the test.
But we don't do it that way anymore.
Precisely my point. So I'm wondering if the application numbers that you have provided are a bit of an apples to oranges comparison. I wonder if you know what percentage of individuals who applied online actually showed up to take the test.
So no, we don't think it's apples to oranges. This process began late June, July of last year when we finally got the application up online. And what we do know is that the applications are much more than they were. I mean, that's the reality. More than when they walk through the door. We have more applications. We do know that the process of getting stuck processing these applications are real. We have more applications than they've been able to process. And part of that, again, is getting people on the streets to help us reduce violence. I believe that as we reorganize that department and focus on processing those applications, that we'll be able to get more people through the process. Again, knowing that, which is why we went out and started looking at Coppin and University of Baltimore, because we know what our current capacity is.
Sure. So do you have a percentage of the folks who apply online who actually show up for a test?
Well, you can take part of the test can be taken online, so you don't have to just show up to take the test. There's a screening process that you can show up for, and there's a whole process that you can go through. But a lot of this stuff now can be done online, which couldn't be done before.
Is there a large number of people who apply online who then do not follow through with their application?
It's the same thing with the application process. There are a lot of people who go down and fill out an application who never follow through on the process. That's why we think it's comparing apples to apples.
Okay, and then of those 3,000 individuals who did apply last year, I've been told in the past that the percentage of applicants who are then later determined to be qualified for positions is extremely low, at times only 5% or so. With 3,000 people who applied last year, that would take the number who may be qualified based on that type of percentage down to 150. That's certainly not enough to overcome attrition as it exists today.
Which is why we've developed a marketing campaign, because we want more applications. We want more than we're getting. And again, even with the applications that you were getting before, this was people walking through the door. Many of those applications didn't get through either. So that's again why we think we're comparing apples to apples, which is why we developed a marketing campaign to continue to increase those applications, because what we'd like to do, and I've got Dan and them working on a 3-year plan to recruit and hire. At this rate, we've got to be hiring, and I've said this time and time again, we've got to be hiring at least 300 officers a year.
So it's not just that you don't have enough capability to process the applications that you have received. It is also the case that you are not receiving enough applications to fill the positions.
No,
that
I
you
don't
need to fill.
know. We haven't evaluated all 3,000 applications that have come in.
Okay.
We haven't evaluated them all. And
do you know what percentage of those you have evaluated?
I don't know what the percentage is currently that we've evaluated. We do know that last year in 2018, 2017, we were able to get over 200 and some odd folk in the door and processed. This year, 200 and what was the number? We got 207 We had 207 through the door last year, which was the highest number since 2012. We got 220, 184. I think it was 184 through the door last year.
And that was substantially fewer than the number of attrition, than the amount of attrition.
36. In comparison to
the year
2016, 103, in comparison to 2015, 152, in comparison to 2014, 60, and in comparison to 2013 at 114. That's considerably lower.
Okay, so your point is, I take it, that you have closed the gap between attrition and applications.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But you still aren't at the point where you are receiving enough qualified candidates to fill all the positions that you're losing through attrition.
Well, let me just say, last year, in 2017, we had 207 that we hired, 204 that we lost. What we realize is that because you've had 545 officers that you lost over a 7-year period, you don't get to replenish those overnight.
Sure.
So that's why we said we've got to increase training, because we've got to get more. We know what we need to recruit every year. In order to get to that 500, you've got to hire 350 or more officers every year to sustain your attrition rate and to increase the numbers of vacancies that you currently have. But a part of that too, Justin, is also shifting to focus on your patrol. Because if the numbers, if we increase the numbers in patrol, which is to me the backbone of your police department, then we also have what we need to focus on. If 40% of 2,000 would be 800 people on the streets, if you get to 60%, that's 1,200 folks who are on the streets. We're not there yet. So as we begin to shift, lose some of the folks through attrition rate in some of the higher positions, it gives us more ability to hire folks at the patrol level. That's what you want. And then you want to incentivize, which is what we're working with our finance department, come out of the police department at 51,000, which is comparable to our surrounding jurisdictions. But our goal is to be able to hold on to those police officers in patrol for the next 3, 4, 5 years. So what does that require? So that requires an incentive raises over the period of years that they're in the patrol department. That is something that we're already working with our finance department on, because I want our folks to come out of the academy at 51, go first year on the street. After first year on the street, they get another pay raise, second year, third year, and fourth year. We need patrol to be as important as any other aspect of this department. And so that is why we're working with our finance department to make sure that we are able to not only hire folks competitively, but keep them in a competitive position so that they get to know their communities, engage in their neighborhoods, and become a fabric of what makes Baltimore a greater city.
You mentioned in a way to suggest some connection, the department's practice of pulling administrative officers in administrative positions onto the street for patrol, and together with that, you mentioned the recruitment office. Has it been the practice of the department to pull administrative officers out of recruitment
I don't
into
think it's
patrol?
been the practice of the department to shake up any department as it relates to patrol. But when violence is rising, I've got to get police officers on the street. It's been the practice of this administration to say, get every available officer possible onto the streets of our city to help us stem the tide of violence.
And that would include officers in the recruitment office?
That would include any officer who is not working in patrol currently.
So I take that to mean it would include officers in the recruitment
absolutely.
office.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that is an appropriate step, given that you say that part of the problem with hiring is that your recruitment office can't process applications fast enough?
Well, that's why we work with our human resources department and said we need you to come in and partner with them so that we can assist, so you can assist us in those efforts, because the results speak for themselves. I mean, when you look at our focus on 7 specific areas in the city in terms of reducing violence through the Violence Reduction Initiative, where in those 7 areas that we focused on, we were able to reduce homicides by 24%.
Okay, we've written about the VRIs before. My question is related to the practice of pulling individuals out of the recruitment office onto the street for
It
patrolling.
wasn't, I said anyone who was not engaged in helping us to reduce violence at that particular time. When crime started spiking, you can go back and look at the numbers in terms of when crime started spiking in the city. We said we've got to have every available officer on the street. I believe that some of those officers came out of recruitment, some of them came out of the personnel office. They came from various places, but they did help us stem the tide of violence in the city.
Okay, and your position
is that the practice going forward? We are back to our shift. We're back to the right shift now. So we
you and
now
I
have
both
24
know that violence comes in waves, and the last time you moved administrative individuals onto the street was not the first time that that has occurred. So one could imagine that there might be another case in the future where one might
not imagine, because what one should know is that we went from 4 to 3 to 5 and 2, which gives you 25% more officers on the street.
So your position is the change in the contract with the shift structure is going to preclude the department from ever again going into administrative positions to fill patrol.
My statement, Justin, is that
My name's Kevin.
My statement, Kevin, is that we added 25% more officers to the street with the shift change. This was a negotiation that I worked on and worked with the department on, because we realized that by doing that, that would give us additional officers on the streets, and that's exactly what it's done.
The request that HR assist the department in processing applications, which I think is what you just referenced, has that solved the issue of the department not being able to process applications fast enough?
I think it's helping. I think it will help the department. I think the reorganization or whatever the commissioner comes in and does, as he's looking at all of these issues. I think you'll see change as we continue to move the department forward. As you well know, we'll have a new commissioner who will have the obligation to work with this department to fix the issues that are plaguing this department, and to assist in recruiting talent to the police department and making sure that everything is operationally functioning in the best interest of the citizens of Baltimore.
What's your perception of the degree to which the repeated scandals and corruption cases and consent decree findings of mismanagement, etc., have impacted the city's ability to attract qualified candidates?
I don't think it has limited the city's ability to attract candidates. As you well know, most of the stuff that you're talking about occurred long before we came here, 2008, 2009. That's 8 years, 9 years before I became mayor. The consent decree is something that has happened as a result of the 10 years of troubles that this police department has had, and which is why we thought it was important to spend a great deal of time on processing and putting together a consent decree, because we knew that there were corrections that needed to be made, and so I think that's what the consent decree will help us to do.
Certainly, but one might imagine a young person coming out of college, maybe with a criminal justice degree, maybe being the type of individual who the department would love to have join them. Looking at some of the headlines from the past few years, seeing the GTTF case and the findings in the consent decree and the Justice Department's report outlining a slew of problems in the department, and thinking twice about applying to Baltimore. You don't think that's an issue?
I don't think so. I think you can look at the numbers and see that. I mean, you can look at last year's hiring and see that. It didn't keep those classes from going forward, and as you just pointed out, the bottleneck in terms of us, pulling folks and having them work on other issues can be fixed. But that's why we have the Department of Human Resources working with our department and helping us to get through this process. I don't think you'll see a lack of individuals wanting to be police officers in Baltimore City. I think if you just listen to the individuals after each graduation who say why they chose, they want to be a part of making the city safe, they want to be public servants for Baltimore, and they've pledged to serve the city with integrity and care. And so, I think we're going to see a great deal of folks wanting to be police officers in Baltimore City, as well as cadets in our police department. They're eager, they're anxious, they want to be a part of something new. I think with a new commissioner coming in with a new view on how to change violence in our city, I think you'll see the change. All of this stuff didn't happen overnight. 7 years of or more of freezing hiring in the police department, certainly that has had its impact. As you pointed out, there were 545 vacancies when we got here. And so we're working very diligently to hire people, to recruit, to create a program that we think is going to attract people across the country to the police department. No longer do we just have to be dependent on people walking through the door, and now we get applications from all across the country. I'm excited about the future of the police department.
What's your perception of the requirements for Baltimore police officers and the competitiveness of the package provided to Baltimore police officers in comparison to the packages provided to recruits in adjacent jurisdictions?
Oh, I think we're just as competitive. We'll be even more competitive when people learn all the things that we're doing for our police officers. When you think about all the incentives to live in the city, home allowances to live in the city, being able to go to school for free in the city. I think there are all kinds of incentives that I think will excite young recruits for living in the city. And I think if you talk to some of the young recruits, they'll tell you. I've known at least 2 recruits now who just been in the department less than 2 years, who bought houses in the city, are helping other young people to do the same. They're excited.
Kevin, I just add one thing to build on what the mayor said. Just the as police recruitment has been a nationwide challenge that different police departments have been seeing, and yet Baltimore attracted nearly twice as many applications in 2018 compared to 2017, which I think, so while that's a nationwide trend, we see what's happening here in Baltimore.
Different.
Yeah, the ability of the department to, you say, double its applications from...
Many of them do and many of them don't. It's the same thing with those who walk through the door. Many of the folks who walk through the door never do anything more than walk through the door. So we don't think, so that's why we say it's still comparing apples to apples.
Okay, so accepting that
we've made it easier for people to do it, like other cities have, like other jurisdictions have. We've just come into the 21st century, like other cities are doing, like other jurisdictions are doing. That's what other jurisdictions are doing.
Okay, well, accepting that it is apples to apples, is the number of applications filled out the correct figure to look at in terms of whether or not you are attracting the number of recruits you need to fill the positions that are vacant?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned Michael Harrison coming in. What do you think he brings to the table specifically in relation to recruitment?
Well, let's just say he's been in the department for 27 years. He knows every aspect of policing. I think he brings his skill, his knowledge, and his ability to transform police departments. That's what he's been able to do as the commissioner of Baltimore City. I think those questions are certainly better asked by him in terms of his own ability and knowledge. But again, from what our perspective, what we've seen, knowledge of the consent decree, certainly has spent a great deal of time in that area, something that's very important. When I sat down with PERF, the police executive research firm, one of the things that they said is that you want somebody who's a change agent. You want somebody who has consent decree experience. To the extent that you can find someone of that caliber, it will bode well for your police department.
Given that recruitment has been such a focus of yours, I wonder if you had a moment to chat with Michael Harrison during your conversations with him specifically about recruitment.
He gets information every day about what's going on in our police department. He knows that we've got to scale up recruitment. He knows that we've got to reduce violence in our city. He knows that there are changes that need to be made. And as one who will have the full authority of running the police department, we will look to him for his guidance and his direction of that police department.
Did you ask him specifically before determining that he was the right person to be your nominee to be police commissioner, what it was he would do specific to recruitment?
When Michael becomes police commissioner, I think he should share that with you, what his plans are.
Okay. I mean, an average city resident might be interested to know that you asked this very important question of him prior to deciding that he was your nominee, which is why I ask it of you.
We ask all those questions. Can you reduce violence? Do you understand the consent decree? Do you realize we have a shortage? We've shared all the numbers. He has all the facts. He has all of that information.
Okay. This is related to Michael Harrison as well. It came up today that his contract would include a couple things I wanted to ask you about. One is the payout if the city council were to vote down his nomination. Is that a dare to the city council to
Let me just say, I think the contract is a good contract. I think that Michael Harrison is a great candidate for Baltimore City. I think all roads point in his direction. I think you could take a poll of the council and see where they stand with Michael Harrison. I think the city is going to be in a great position. We don't dare anybody to do anything. I don't even dare people to walk across the street. The only thing I want us to do is reduce violence in our city and make our city a much safer city for all of us.
We got time for one more, Kevin.
If I can, I hope I might be able to get to. This is just a follow-up on the last question. Does it put the city council in an awkward position to think that they have to pay someone $275,000 even if they don't hire
I
them?
don't think first of all, it doesn't come out of the city council's budget. It comes out of the city's budget. But no, I don't think it does that. I think this council will get a chance to sit down with Michael. That some of them have already met them. I understand they've come back from New Orleans with a really great report. Again, I think he is the right person for the city right now.
There's also one other provision. It seems his contract makes it easier than past contracts for the city to fire him in the case that he might embarrass the city or something like that. That seems to make the contract stronger on the city's end of things. Is that something you wanted to intentionally do, given some past experiences of yours?
Let me just say, my knowledge of Michael Harrison is that he's excited to be in Baltimore. He has left his family, his friends, his associates. His wife is moving here with him. His son just got married this weekend, but he's moving to Baltimore. He's already been out. He came here on his own dime, looking for a place to live. So I think Michael Harrison will do a great job as the commissioner of Baltimore City.
And last word to you. Do you want to add anything that we haven't touched on in relation to recruitment?
I think when you see our campaign, even you will be excited.
When is that out?
Should be sometime in April, close to May.
Okay.
Can I add just one final thing? Just to say, Kevin, about the meaning of the application numbers. I mean, when you look at the staffing trends, as the mayor's pointed to prior to Mayor Pugh becoming mayor, the decline in the size of the BPD was driven by a decline in hiring. This is before Mayor Pugh became mayor. And the driver of that was a significant decline in the applications the department was receiving. So that's why we focused first on trying to boost application numbers as a first step to try and boost hiring.
Thank you. Yeah.
I guess there's also wouldn't be an emphasis on hiring if the positions were frozen or there was no intention to fill them, right?
Well, positions were frozen for a number of years, but you also had, which is why you had such an overtime problem. I mean, I think you know that. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
All right.